It started with a photo. Just a single innocent family photo. A Christmas morning snapshot. A warm, fuzzy image of the Miller family gathered around the tree. Smiling faces. Wrapping paper scattered across the floor. Laughter frozen in time. For years the photos were just memories. Until one day they became evidence. When that same image was posted online following the arrest, people noticed something off. Not just about the photo, but about the man in it. The man who had been hiding in plain sight. He wasn't just part of the family. He was the predator no one ever suspected. And by the time they realized the truth, it was far too late. As the years unfolded, the Holloways remained the picture of suburban happiness. Their holiday cards were impeccable, shimmering smiles under snowy backdrops, color-coordinated outfits, laughter frozen in time. Friends would joke that their family should be in a magazine. But nestled among those perfectly posed photos was a man whose presence never raised suspicion. Jacob Holloway the father. Quiet. Dependable. A regional sales manager for a paper supply company. The type of man who always mowed his lawn on Saturdays and never forgot a birthday. He wasn't the most charismatic, but he was steady, a rock in the whirlwind of modern family life. To neighbors, Jacob was just dad. He drove the carpool. He grilled burgers on Memorial Day. He helped fix leaky pipes and hosted poker nights in the garage. He was normal. Almost too normal. But behind closed doors, cracks were forming. Laura, his wife, had started noticing things, little things that didn't make sense. His long business trips, that always had vague details. His obsessive locking of the basement door. The way his demeanor shifted slightly whenever they passed by the wooded area near Foxridge Hollow. It was subtle, barely noticeable. But Laura, ever intuitive, began to wonder. Still, Jacob never gave her a reason to push. He was attentive, responsible, and unfailingly polite. The kind of man who stood when women entered the room. Who insisted on doing the dishes every night. Who told his daughter Rachel, "A man's job is to protect." But protection in Jacob's mind had a far darker meaning. The illusion of innocence held strong. In the dozens of family photos lined along the hallway, Jacob was always there, smiling, arms wrapped around his children, eyes gentle. No one ever questioned what those eyes had seen. Or what those hands had done. Not until the girl in the red hoodie disappeared. It happened on a cool October evening, the kind where the wind carries an edge and the trees look like they're holding secrets. 13-year-old Molly Jensen had been walking home from her best friend's house just 4 blocks over. She never made it. The town of Foxridge Hollow buzzed with anxiety. Posters with Molly's freckled face plastered telephone poles, gas stations, and church bulletin boards. The community mobilized like never before. Candlelight vigils. Volunteer search parties. Helicopters with infrared scanning the dense forest nearby. Jacob Holloway, ever the good neighbor, was there, helping coordinate search grids, handing out water bottles, even organizing carpools for the volunteers. People praised him. "That man's a saint," one local reporter said during a live broadcast. A model citizen in a town that's shaken to its core. But what no one knew, not yet, was that Jacob was also a man with a secret hiding spot. Just outside the search radius, about a mile from the edge of the forest, sat an old drainage tunnel half covered by vines and brush. It had been forgotten by the town long ago. Jacob hadn't. Inside, beneath loose boards and a rusted toolbox, sat a set of items no one should ever see. A girl's backpack, a pair of red shoelaces, and a small pendant with the letter M engraved on it. Molly's mother had said it was a birthday gift. She never took it off. The pendant would remain hidden for 3 more years. Meanwhile, whispers began to surface, quiet ones. A retired detective named Sam Whitaker, who lived 2 streets over, had started asking questions no one wanted to hear. He didn't like how Jacob always knew the search routes. How he was always around. Too helpful. Too clean. "Sometimes the most helpful man," Sam muttered to a fellow retired officer, "is the one cleaning up his own mess." But without evidence, a whisper is just air. And in Foxridge Hollow, Jacob Holloway remained what he had always been. A husband. A father. And the man in every family photo. By the time winter rolled in, Molly Jensen's name was slowly being spoken less in Foxridge Hollow. The vigils had stopped. The search parties were disbanded. And her family, forever broken, tried to hold on to whatever sliver of normalcy they could manage. But Detective Sam Whitaker, retired or not, couldn't let it go. He'd spent 34 years solving violent crimes before arthritis forced him out of the force. His instincts were still sharp, and something about Jacob Holloway had always scraped at the back of his mind. Too clean, too rehearsed, and always The first to arrive, the last to leave. And when Sam started pulling old neighborhood photos for his own private timeline, that's when the pattern began to emerge. There Jacob was at every birthday party, every neighborhood barbecue, every back-to-school celebration. Nothing out of the ordinary, until you started counting. 8 photos. 8 different children. And in each photo, one of those children had gone missing sometime later. One from a town 30 miles away. Another from a campground 2 states over. And the worst part? No one had ever connected the dots. Because each time Jacob had a new job, a new neighborhood, a new story. And no one ever questioned the helpful, smiling man in the background. Sam brought what he found to the local sheriff, but it was all circumstantial. It's just photos, Sam. He's never even been a suspect before. But Sam didn't stop. He began retracing Jacob's life, town by town, case by case. And each place he found a similar pattern. A missing child. A grieving family. And always someone remembered a man who fit Jacob's profile. Friendly, quiet, unremarkably helpful. Sam's obsession grew. He started visiting the places in person. Gathering testimonies, old police reports, even church records. He pieced together a chilling timeline that stretched nearly 20 years. Meanwhile, Jacob Holloway continued living his ordinary life. Hosting barbecues, mowing his lawn, smiling for the camera. He never suspected that someone had finally started connecting the snapshots. That the man behind the camera had now become the focus of the lens. Because the thing about patterns is, they don't lie. And this one was soaked in blood. It was a stormy Thursday when Sam Whitaker knocked on the door of a woman named Louise Everly. She lived 2 towns over in a quiet cul-de-sac, and her granddaughter, Emily, had vanished 14 years earlier while riding her bike home from the corner store. Louise opened the door slowly, cautious, until Sam mentioned her granddaughter's name. Her expression shifted, cautiousness melted into a dull, worn grief. "I still set a plate for her every Christmas," she whispered, ushering him inside. He told her about his investigation, about the pattern, the photos, the man, Jacob Holloway. Her eyes went wide. Then she stood abruptly and walked down the hallway. When she returned, she was holding an old, dust-covered photo album. "He helped us put up flyers," she said, flipping the album open with trembling fingers. "He was just visiting family. Quiet fella. Took this photo himself." And there he was, Jacob, smiling in the background as Louise and little Emily posed next to a missing poster stapled to a tree. Sam's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. Jacob hadn't just been present, he'd inserted himself. Over and over again. Back in Fox Ridge Hollow, Sam handed over everything to Detective Lisa Ramirez, the only cop in the department who believed him. Lisa was sharp, driven, and had lost a niece to a similar unsolved case. The photos, the names, the locations, it was enough to convince her something horrifying was hiding beneath the surface. She filed for a warrant. Not an arrest, yet, but a search of Jacob's property. When they arrived at Jacob Holloway's quaint, white-trimmed home, he greeted them with that same harmless smile. "Afternoon, officers. Can I help you?" He didn't resist. Didn't even seem surprised. Inside, everything looked normal, until they got to the basement. That's where the walls turned cold. Where the carefully curated illusion fell apart. Because behind a row of paint cans and gardening tools was a locked room. And inside that room they found it. Photos. Hundreds of them. Tacked to the walls, organized into rows. Children's faces smiling up at the camera. All of them taken by Jacob. All of them missing. But that wasn't the worst of it. There was a shelf lined with plastic containers, meticulously labeled with initials and dates. Inside, locks of hair, torn pieces of clothing, tiny toys, and in some cases, teeth. And sitting atop the center table was an album, bound in black leather. On its first page, Molly Jensen's school photo. Below it, written in perfect cursive, Fox Ridge Hollow. The last one. The room went silent. Lisa turned pale. Sam clenched his fists. Because they knew then, this wasn't a man who slipped up. This was a man who documented his evil. Who wanted it remembered. And worst of all, he had never intended to stop. The interrogation room was quiet. Sterile. A camera hummed softly from the ceiling corner, watching every twitch of Jacob Holloway's face. He sat across from Detective Lisa Ramirez with his fingers laced calmly on the table, like he was waiting for a casual chat over coffee. Lisa studied him. Most killers either broke down or fought the mask slipping from their face. Jacob did neither. "Why the photos?" she finally asked. Jacob tilted his head, that polite smile lingering. "People remember photos," he said. "They forget stories." But a photo, he pointed to an imaginary frame in the air, that stays with you forever. A moment frozen in time. A child's last smile before the world stops looking. Lisa's skin prickled. She opened the evidence folder in front of her, sliding out the one image that still haunted her the most. Jacob standing behind the Jensen family at the town carnival, camera hanging around his neck. Molly was holding cotton candy, her mother's arm around her. Why insert yourself into their lives? She pressed. Why attend their vigils, walk their streets, volunteer for search teams? Jacob gave a soft chuckle. Because that's where the story is being told. And if you want to understand an ending, detective, you have to be there at the beginning. There was something off in his voice, not delusional, not even smug. Just practiced. He'd rehearsed this maybe for years. When Lisa slid a picture of Emily Everly across the table, something in his gaze flickered. She called me Mr., he murmured. Mr. Holloway. Asked if I had any more apple slices in my cooler. Silence stretched across the table. You're a monster, Lisa said. Jacob blinked slowly. No. Monsters are impulsive. Sloppy. I was careful. Then with a small shrug, you call it murder. I call it permanence. Sam Whitaker watched from behind the glass, fists clenched so tight his nails dug into his palms. He couldn't believe it, this man had been part of his town. His school events. His community barbecues. Always the man in the background. Always watching. Lisa leaned in. Tell me where the bodies are. Jacob looked her dead in the eye and smiled. You've already found them. You just haven't realized where they were placed. A cryptic response, but one that would soon make horrifying sense. Because in the following days police began digging, figuratively and literally, at Jacob's property, in the woods, even at a now-closed summer camp where he once worked as a handyman. And piece by piece, memory by memory, the full extent of his crimes began to unfold. The cold winter wind howled as the search teams combed through the overgrown woods on Jacob Holloway's land. Every inch of it had been scoured, each leaf turned, each stone shifted. But it wasn't until a group of officers stumbled across a collapsed shed at the edge of the property that things took a darker turn. The wooden structure was old, barely standing, hidden away from prying eyes. Beneath its rotting floorboards, something glinted, a flash of silver under the decaying wood. Was a camera. Lisa Ramirez knelt beside the discovery, her heart pounding. This was it. The key to unraveling the last piece of the puzzle. She could already hear her breath echoing in the cold air, her thoughts racing faster than she could process. How many years had this camera been there? How many more secrets lay buried in that shed? Carefully, she pried it from the debris, examining the camera's small screen. It was covered in dirt, the lens scratched, but the memory card, intact. Back at the station, the photos were uploaded. The first image appeared on the screen, a family portrait taken at a birthday party. The next, another family laughing by the beach. Then, a mother and daughter in front of their house, holding hands. Lisa's stomach churned. Jacob had documented everything. Every moment, every smile, every life he had carefully inserted himself into. And now, those same images, smiling, happy families, would be forever linked to his crimes. Then came the shocking revelation. Hidden among the thousands of images was something far more chilling. A single grainy photo of a young girl lying motionless in the woods. Her face barely visible, but the twisted angle of her body told the story without words. Lisa's heart stopped as she recognized the girl. Molly Jensen. The photo was a clue, a brutal message from a man who had kept his secrets for so long, weaving them into the fabric of his lies. But this wasn't just a photo. It was proof. How many more? Lisa muttered under her breath. The investigation was now more than just piecing together the fragmented life of Jacob Holloway. It was about finding the missing children, the names that had been buried under layers of silence and deception. As the officers dug deeper, they unearthed more photos, more evidence of Jacob's involvement in the lives of his victims. Each snapshot another chilling piece of the puzzle, revealing the ugly truth behind the man who'd once been the quiet neighbor. As the weeks passed, the truth began to emerge, and the town of Briarwood, shocked, terrified, and heartbroken, struggled to make sense of it all. The photos weren't just memories to Jacob. They were his trophies. And with every new discovery, Lisa realized just how long Jacob had been playing the role of the perfect neighbor. How many families had been drawn into his orbit, unknowingly placing their trust in a man who had no intention of ever being their friend. He had been there in every photo, just out of sight but always there. And that's the haunting truth of the man who was hiding in plain sight all along. Sometimes, the people we trust most can be the ones who hurt us the deepest. If you found this story chilling, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more gripping true crime cases. But most importantly, let us know your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if you found out someone you trusted was capable of such darkness? Stay vigilant and remember, trust is not always what it seems.